Chad, Don Staley's South Carolina team in pursuit of perfection, that was certainly put to the test, as was the brawl for all, the clearing of the benches, which you rarely see in women's college basketball, and we rarely see that lead the show. But this is putting on a show right now for women's hoops.
So this was wild over the weekend. This was on Sunday. There was also an eventful game on Saturday with South Carolina, where Camila Cardoso attempted and hit her first three-pointer of the season to beat Tennessee at the buzzer. But a benches clearing brawl. This was after LSU's Flau'jae Johnson intentionally fouled Malaysia Fulwiley at one point in the game, and this sparked some interaction between those two, and eventually Camila Cardoso comes out of nowhere and just bull rushes a LSU player and knocks her to the ground. A player's brother jumped over the scorer's table to come and get involved in the brawl at one point. Now, post-game, Don Staley just flat out apologized, said it's got no place. We apologize for our behavior in it, and said game was really emotionally wound tight, and players just let their emotions get the best of them in that moment. Kim Mulkey, on the other hand, ladies and gentlemen, she went full Cedric the Entertainer from Kings of Comedy, and basically she went with the "we wish" mantra for LSU women's basketball. Here is what Kim Mulkey had to say post-game.
No one wants to be a part of that. No one wants to see that ugliness. But I can tell you this. I wish she would have pushed Angel Reese. Don't push a kid that you 6'8". Don't push somebody that little. That was uncalled for, in my opinion. Let those two girls that were jawing, let them go at it.
Now, I'll say this for Kim Mulkey. Hilarious. Both her outfits and her post-game press conferences.
Is that Dolly
to
Parton
say that? I mean, it's just ruthless, this woman. And her outfits are, talking about clown show, an absolute clown when it comes to her wardrobe. But I don't know fashion either. Maybe she's ahead of the fashion trend. Sure, it's awesome. I'm not really sure. I wish she would have pushed Angel Reese. Here's what I'll say about Camila Cardoso. She likely would have kicked Angel Reese's ass too. I'm not going to sit here and say Angel Reese would have put up a great fight, because this woman is huge and she's bigger than everyone else on the court. So she's going to hold her own in any fight that's out there. Here is what we have learned about both LSU and South Carolina, and something we love to do on this show is state obvious truths that others are unwilling to state when it's obvious. Here is what's obvious about these two teams. We've got the Detroit Pistons bad boys and John Thompson's Hoya paranoia all wrapped up into one with these two teams. They are villains. I know for LSU fans and South Carolina fans, that's not the case. They're villains. The way they play the game, and this fight yesterday, which, like it or not, doesn't matter what year it is, when a bunch of people turn on the TV and see a bunch of women brawling in a sporting event, their first inclination is to say, that's not very ladylike to see that in a basketball game, and I don't like it. Again, I'm stating obvious truths that others are afraid to admit. That's reality. That's reality in 2024. It's reality in 1954. It's reality in 1984. That really has not changed. So much so that Don Staley's even apologizing for her team's behavior in all of this. They're villains. I think both are okay with that role and wearing the black hat as the villain in any confrontation. And it's good for women's basketball. I think this is great. We got into this with Angel Reese versus Caitlin Clark a year ago, and it was good for women's basketball. All the talk about that and all people picking sides and dividing it down racial lines or however you wanted to, it was good for women's basketball. I think this brawl, I hate to see it. It's not something that's pretty to watch. It's good for the sport. Gets us talking about it. It gets people interested in it. And it reaffirms what I believe, and that is, this is the Bad Boys Pistons. This is John Thompson's Georgetown Hoyas.
Yes.
These are teams that are okay playing rough, playing tough, pissing you off, and being the villain. And it doesn't affect them negatively. I see that with both Kim Mulkey and Don Staley, even though both handled their post-game press conference differently. Speaking of handling things differently, I think we've got some photos of this and some tweets that were put out. Caitlin Clark, post-winning the Big Ten championship, this is another reason why people love Caitlin Clark. And this is one of the reasons why Caitlin Clark is looked at as the hero in all of this. And it's the fact that post-game, she's walking around signing autographs for hundreds of people. She's walking around going the extra mile for people left and right. And that's what she did post-game with that. Whether you like it or not, I think for a lot of America, Iowa is going to be looked at as the heroes in this story. Here's Caitlin Clark after the championship walking to the locker room and does a beeline to a bunch of little kids to sign autographs. This was either before or after she spent a ton of time in the crowd signing autographs also. She's likable. She's a superstar. She's the all-time leading scorer in the history of college basketball. And she's looked at as a hero, and Iowa's looked at as the good guys. And I don't necessarily think it's just all about race. And if you think it is, I would ask you to turn on the footage of the fight we saw yesterday between LSU and South Carolina, where there's a family member jumping over, a man, by the way, to get involved in a fight with a bunch of women.
Also.
And I would say that's why it's that way. And, Hutton, I don't think Dawn Staley really cares. She's got an undefeated team trying to win a national title. Kim Mulkey's trying to repeat as national champions. I don't think those coaches care. In fact, that fuels them, and they like it when things like this are said about their programs.
Yes, but I think Dawn Staley, she was also apologizing for that representing the sport, not just her team. That's, by the way, the family member that jumped the rail or just came down.
Yeah.
How fast security was on him was impressive.
That was good.
I had no idea that they were watching that while the brawl's going on.
Well, and rightfully so, considering what that could have been.
Sure,
right?
But no doubt. But the protocol, I guess, has them watching to see who's coming onto the floor. I mean, they stopped him cold in his tracks immediately.
Well, I think...
And maybe he'd been talking some trash prior to that. I don't know.
I mean, look, throughout time, works of fiction, anything that's entertainment and based in that has known this fact. It's good to have good guys and bad guys.
Yes.
Pro wrestling knows that.
You need your villain.
You got the heel and you got the hero. It's very clear to me, whether people are willing to admit it or not, Caitlin Clark and Iowa women's basketball is the hero. And the two teams that are fighting each other and the star center that's 6'8", that is Goliath of women's college basketball. And here's Caitlin Clark with David with the sling trying to knock her out. Meanwhile, Camila Cardoso's trying to knock out some girl half her size during a game. It's very clear who the villain and who the hero is going into the women's basketball tournament. And that's not me saying if you're a South Carolina fan or like Dawn Staley in South Carolina, not to root for them. Absolutely root for them. Tons of people were rooting for Georgetown back in the day. Tons of people rooted for the Detroit Pistons.
They get the chance to
as the bad boys.
People root against UConn too,
away.
by the way.
It's great.
Whenever they were winning at this level.
It's great. It's great for the sport. Honestly, the division of this is great. It's going to lead to more and more interest. And I'm on board with it. I'm here for the entertainment. In women's college basketball this season and leading into this tournament, Hutton, it's entertaining the hell out of me.
I didn't watch a single bit of a highlight of any of these conference tournaments across women's basketball. But whenever I saw this happen over the weekend or yesterday, yes, I'm paying attention to it. You don't see it.
Well,
and I didn't think, this wasn't ladylike. I thought, now the women are getting after it.
Yeah.
Because we've seen a few confrontations across the college basketball season and in the NBA recently. And now I'm thinking, then you're right. These are the two teams that, have that identity about them.
Well,
and I think the coaches embrace that. They embrace the identity of that because the perception of who you're going on the floor with, it's no finesse about it.
They're going to play that up too. Dawn Staley is going to play up if they meet Iowa or if LSU does, just like Angel Reese.
That's right.
Was as she said, in her bag a year ago when she's talking trash and pointing the finger and doing all that.
Yes.
They are going to go into that thing at Mach 3, ready to just annihilate Iowa and Caitlin Clark because in their mind they're going to be told by their head coaches, America wants this girl to succeed. They don't think much of you. They don't like you. They want you to lose. What are you going to do about it? It's absolutely going to be played up. Kim Mulkey is example A of how it's going to be played up post-game when she's saying, I wish you would have pushed Angel Reese. I'd have liked to have seen that fight happen. This is not some woman that's afraid of a fight. We're going to back down from some woman. Dawn Staley's exactly the same. and it leads to great theater. And that's what the women's tournament is going to be. I'm tuning in. I love it. I'm going to follow these 3 teams throughout. I hope all 3 make it to the Final Four, and we get to see this round-robin battle royale of all of this and the mix of all of this happening. That's what I'm rooting for. One thing that I was not rooting for on Saturday was for my beloved alma mater, Tennessee, to come all the way back from a 23-point deficit to take the lead late against South Carolina.
Yes.
And then blow the game and lose to a team. They had a chance to give them their one loss of the season, likely their only loss, because I do think South Carolina is going to go on to win it all. I'd be shocked if they don't. In one of the most confounding ways possible. I cannot fathom losing a game in any more of an excruciating and dumb fashion than Tennessee did on Saturday. They come all the way back, commendable, down 23. They're up 2. They go to the line for 2 free throws with 4 seconds left to ice it. They miss both with a really good free throw shooter. They then intentionally foul, not wanting to give up a 3-point shot attempt, but they intentionally foul right before the player for South Carolina was going to heave up a half-court desperation 3. I'm thinking I'd rather take my chances on that shot at the buzzer, missing, than fouling and letting them inbound. Then you let them inbound, and the Tennessee player, Tamari Key, does not move and just stays underneath the basket with 1.1 seconds left and lets Camila Cardoso, granted, who had not taken a 3 all year, but cleanly catch it with no on-ball defender, turn and bank it in at the buzzer to win the game. It was awful, dumb basketball for the Tennessee Lady Vols. It was inexcusable watching that play. It's as if Key thought there were 7 minutes left in the first quarter.
Instead of the time, yeah.
And she's just been told, hey, this girl doesn't shoot threes, so I'm leaving her alone, not understanding there's 1 second left. Maybe I need to change my approach a little and make the catch tough or get my hands up to make it more difficult or something.
Isn't that coaching?
It's coaching. It's also players not knowing what to do.
Yeah.
The whole thing was bad.
It's awful.
It was terrible.
Chad, well, we got Dan Dakich joining us in about 5 minutes. There's a lot of reaction today to NFL free agency and the start of the legal negotiation period. They're going to say it's a legal tampering, but it's not tampering. It's you're available to negotiate, and then the signings become official on Wednesday, the start of the new league year. There's a lot of reaction to Kirk Cousins' contract that he will sign on Wednesday with the Atlanta Falcons. 4 years, $180 million. Over the course of the next 2 years, he's going to get roughly $90 to $100 million. $50 million guaranteed right now in the signing bonus. And we're looking at these numbers. And we're thinking, man, this is all for a guy who left last season with a torn Achilles. And now he's back in Atlanta. And the Falcons are doing what? I'm on the opposite of this. I absolutely love it. I love this move for the Atlanta Falcons because of the pairing of the offense that they're going to have with a quarterback that can distribute the football and run this offense, and the talent around now the veteran, the 12-year veteran quarterback. And it allows the Atlanta Falcons in a division that is for the taking. The 7-10 Atlanta Falcons now change the perception of how I view them. Up-and-coming defense and an offense that never took full advantage of Bijan Robinson and Drake London and trading for Van Jefferson and having Kyle Pitts and having a very, very good offensive line. Now they have the quarterback who was playing great up until his injury and goes now to Atlanta after turning down the Vikings offer and says, I'll stay paired with the Sean McVay style of offense because Kevin O'Connell, he was under Sean McVay, then took the head coaching job at Minnesota. Under O'Connell that year was Zach Robinson, who is now the offensive coordinator in Atlanta. Raheem Morris, the new head coach for the Falcons, he was with and around Kirk Cousins for 3 years in Washington. Chad, the Falcons have the number 8 pick in the draft. Yes, they've spent money. They've spent money on a quarterback that can get them to the next level. And had they handed Lamar Jackson $200 million guaranteed when they had the opportunity, they would have been in the playoffs this postseason, but they weren't. And now you have Cousins, who is the number 1 free agent available, headed to Atlanta after telling the Vikings, thanks, but no thanks, I'm going to test free agency, and for good reason based on the money. But just think about what Cousins had. He made $28 million per year as a free agent in 2018, and that's just 6 years ago. And the quarterback number that we got through watching last summer, I mean, it had doubled. It had doubled what Cousins was receiving in 2018. So if you think about the money and you start to realize, well, that's just the going rate for the quarterback position, the Falcons got the best option. They didn't have to trade with Chicago for Fields, and they didn't have to go the draft route, and we knew they weren't going to go the Ritter route again. Cousins allows them to take the path to the postseason. Expectations are high. They should be. But in year one for Raheem Morris, they got the quarterback to pair with their new head coach. I think it's a great move.
Yeah, I like it too. The one surprise to me in all of this is the fact that you've got Kirk Cousins and the Vikings were wanting him to come back. I just assumed he was not coming back to the Vikings because it was kind of an understood thing that they weren't going to pay for him to come back, so he's going to go somewhere else in free agency. I was a little surprised that the Vikings weren't more of an option for him based on their desire to re-sign him. And maybe it was just simply a money thing that the Vikings weren't going to come close to what the Falcons paid him in the end, but his desire to get out of Minnesota and not be paired with Justin Jefferson and instead go to Atlanta was a little surprising to me given just the type of guy Kirk Cousins is. I just assumed it was more the Vikings deciding we want to go a different direction and we don't want to overpay for you at this point in your career, but that wasn't the case because they were very interested in re-signing Kirk Cousins.
Well, I don't know
that part
I don't know where the money is.
That confuses me a little bit.
I don't know where the guaranteed money was.
I don't either, but so you get what I'm saying.
That would show the interest level.
I didn't even think they were going to be at the table. I thought that they weren't going to offer him anything. They were just going to let him leave in free agency, and they were going to go a different direction. The fact they were wanting him at all did surprise me a little bit.
Well, and what I don't know and what we don't know is, well, he told them Sunday night he was going to test the market based on whatever the discussions were that the Vikings had put forward, right? Mm-hmm. And to me, having the professional courtesy of doing all of that, right, tells me he gave them an opportunity to come back, but he had this option, and he probably knew ahead of time anyway. I mean, it's the legal negotiation period is preceded by the illegal tampering period.
Yeah,
there's no doubt that that's happened. Look at how fast some of these players were negotiating contracts. Isn't that just a miracle?
Here's one Atlanta perspective, which is interesting to me, and I just saw this come down on X. This is from David O'Brien, who's an Atlanta writer who actually covers the Braves that I follow.
Yep.
And he says, I don't dislike the Kirk Cousins move, which makes the Falcons better, no doubt. But Justin Fields is 10 years younger, dynamic, and not coming off a torn Achilles. Not consistent yet, but Bears didn't surround him with much. Did I mention dynamic? You tune in or buy tickets to watch Justin Fields, not necessarily Kirk Cousins.
Well, you
That's
tune
one
in
Atlanta
and buy
perspective.
tickets to win games.
Yeah.
And Kirk Cousins has done that recently in Minnesota.
Right, but I do agree that Justin Fields would have been I think Kirk Cousins is a better quarterback than Justin Fields, and all the proof on the field shows that. But I do agree that Justin Fields is a better box office hit in the city of Atlanta.
In Georgia.
Than Kirk Cousins, for sure, for a lot of reasons.
Is it a fit for their offense? Is it a deal where you're going to give this type of contract to Fields? Because if you trade for him, he's in the final year, the option year. You've got to extend him, right? A lot of movement and moving parts behind the scenes if you're trading for Justin Fields. Dan Dakich joins us here on Hot Mic with Hutton Withrow at Outkick.com. Joins us each week, and you can find him each day. Don't At Me with Dan Dakich at Outkick each morning. Dan, good to see you. Hope things are well. It is tournament time. The madness is here.
Oh, this is the greatest week right now of the year, in my opinion. I love afternoon hoops. I love conference tournaments. To me, it reminds me of being in sixth grade, and Mr. Dolzo would whip open the big black TV, and we would watch the Reds and the Mets or somebody playing Major League Baseball. It's like skipping school. I love this week and next week and the week after.
It's the official start of spring for me every year, the NCAA tournament when it gets going. It's a great time. Mike Woodson doesn't want people questioning his job. Says that he's done his job and his job should not be in question, Dan. What do you make of those statements coming off a year where Indiana's not going to be playing in the NCAA tournament?
Well, I'm not so sure they're not going to be playing in the NCAA tournament. They got a nice path in the Big Ten tournament, and they should beat Penn State. And They beat. They get to the final. They're going to make the NCAA tournament. But Mike Woodson saying that he shouldn't be questioned is really typical Mike Woodson. I've said forever, Indiana needs to get back to its arrogance. Indiana needs to get back to when we thought we were better, but we acted better, and we won a lot. Not all the time, but we won a lot. And Mike's given the arrogance without the achievement. He also said he has done his job and all that. Well, yes, he has, but he hasn't done his job well. He came in here talking about NCAA tournaments and Big Ten titles, and frankly, he hasn't come close to competing in either. Like, what you do as a coach is this. I'll give you an example. It is so difficult to win a league like the Big Ten by more than a game that Matt Painter, just for the second time in a row, won the Big Ten by multiple games. Last time that happened was 1975 and 1976. So the point is, when you're a college basketball coach, you're probably a coach anywhere, your goal every year is I want to be playing the last week of the season for a championship. And if you do that enough, you're going to win some. And it's hard to win Big Ten championships. Well, Woodson has never played the last month for a championship. It's always been to get in the NCAA tournament. So God bless him. I love the arrogance, but you got to have a little achievement to go along with the arrogance.
So Hutton and I were discussing, bets to make over the weekend, and on Saturday I said I really like the value of Kentucky money line, given that I thought Tennessee was overvalued as like a 6.5, 7-point favorite in that game.
We cashed it, Dan. We cashed it.
And we cashed that when Rick Barnes said after the game he thought his guys were too emotional because of the senior day stuff before the game, and they came out and the two seniors were 0 for 11 in the first half of the game, and Reed Sheppard was too much for Kentucky. Dan, what'd you make of the game? What Rick Barnes had to say about senior day and what that means for guys and how hard that can be sometimes at home, but also the show that was put on by both Reed Sheppard and Dalton Connect in the second half of that game.
I thought it was one of the best games I've seen all year. I couldn't stop watching. And Rick Barnes is 100% right. Hell, my senior night was the first night Indiana lost. Gary Grant hit a shot and won the game, hit a bomb to beat us. And you know what? It is tough. He's exactly right. I coached a number of senior nights both at home and on the road, and they are. Some guys handle them differently. And if you have look, let's be honest. If you have a really good team and you're playing a bad team, or you're playing a good team that's playing bad, then it doesn't matter. But Kentucky offensively is on a roll, and I got to tell you, man, Reed Sheppard is ridiculous, and Darren Connett is ridiculous. And see, Reed Sheppard's dad, Jeff, I recruited the hell out of him, and Knight and I got into a night down, drag out, MFing each other when he told me Jeff Sheppard wasn't good enough to play at Indiana. And that set Indiana basketball back a long time because Jeff Sheppard was the 96 MOP, most outstanding player in the NCAA tournament, and his kid who followed him. He would have followed him to Indiana, for crying out loud. Man, he's great. That was one of the most fun. I mean, guys are hitting bombs, and Tennessee wouldn't go away, and that was a hell of a basketball game. That was a high-level game, and you got to worry about Kentucky, man. I thought you guys were talking about money line on Kentucky to make the Final Four or something because, hey, in the NCAA tournament, I err on teams that can score it. And Kentucky can score, and apparently
yes,
Tennessee can too, I guess. Yeah, it's fun.
Two of the top 10 Kentucky's top 3, I think, but 2 of the top 10 offenses in the country with Tennessee and Kentucky this year. 53% he's going to finish the regular season from 3, Reed Sheppard, and he takes a ton of them. That's an insane stat. Over 50% on the season shows how much of a marksman he is. He's incredible. And, Dan, I think the scary part for the rest of college basketball is I think he's got 1 or 2 more years. I know he's a lottery pick right now. I think because of his lineage with his dad and what he means to the state of Kentucky, I think he's coming back for at least 1 more season, maybe 2.
I got no idea, but I'd be shocked. His dad didn't make it in the NBA. He stayed 4. I really don't know. I know this. His dad's an awesome dude, man. I don't remember a lot of recruits, but I remember going to Peachtree City so many times. The freaking wrestling coach there had been the wrestling coach at my high school, and I just love Jeff Sheppard. And I I think his kid, if you're a top 5 pick, you get that clock started for a second NBA contract. I don't know how you don't do it, but hey, look, it ain't a bad gig being a shepherd playing at Kentucky, right? I mean, what's wrong with that?
It's not.
You know, I mean,
Sharpshooter's there.
It ain't like you're
Sharpshooter's there, Dan,
it ain't
legit.
like you're going broke. It ain't like you're going broke, man. You know, you're going to make some money, and if Cal don't want to pay you, there are a lot of places across the country that will, because every year, every kid's a free agent. So I would surprise if he's a legit top 5 pick, which he probably is. I don't know the foreign market, so what do I know? Man, it's hard to say no to that kind of cash.
Dan, so SEC tournament's right down the street from us, a block from us, as the tip-off on Wednesday. How many teams legitimately do you think can win this tournament this week?
Yeah, that's a great question, because I've watched a lot of SEC basketball. I don't like half of them. I think Mississippi's a mess. I think there's a lot of athletes that are dumb. I think that the teams play dumb. Not only athletes, but the way they're set up. Like people like Florida, I don't know. Like Georgia, I'm watching Georgia, and Mike White's a good coach, but I'm watching them play Ole Miss, and I'm like, holy hell, these teams are moronic. Like, and maybe morons playing morons is good, and I love the coaches, I do, but I'm watching these teams going, damn, they got guys. I'll tell you this, looking at the SEC, a couple things have hit me. One, how's Arkansas lost all these games? I'm watching them play Alabama, and I'm like, jeez, right? Like these dudes, Alabama's got dudes. I would argue that, I don't know, maybe there's a hotter team. I don't have their record, but damn, Kentucky looks good. I can see Tennessee winning it. Auburn, Bruce usually has a pretty good team. I really like Lamont Paris. I've known Lamont since his days. He was an assistant when I was a head coach in the MAC, and he's done an amazing job. But I look at some of the teams like Missouri stinks, Vanderbilt stinks, Arkansas I don't understand, Georgia stinks, Mississippi stinks, Mississippi State, that guy got fired at Bowling Green for being a clown in a bar. LSU stinks. Texas A&M, that coach is more promotion than anything else, drives me nuts. So I'm going to say 4 teams can win: Alabama, Auburn, Kentucky, and Tennessee. How's that for a long answer?
That was a great detailed answer on that one. Duke losing twice to North Carolina. Kyle Filipowski with the trip attempt. People joking the ghost of Grayson Allen was back in Cameron Indoor for that game as he tried to trip someone. What is this Duke team? What'd you make of the trip attempt with Kyle Filipowski?
This has been going back to 92. I mean, big dorky white guys at Duke have been doing stupid stuff forever. I mean, Leitner stepping on Amino Timberlake, a really nice kid, by the way, that I tried to recruit to Indiana, not Leitner, but Timberlake. This has been going on forever. Grayson Allen acting like an idiot, and Duke will make excuses. But the big thing that came out for me was, I don't know if you saw this, but these clowns in the Cameron Crazies, not only throwing stuff at the end of the game, but the stuff they were saying to R.J. Davis, I want to kill you, I've had sex with your mother, all this stuff that these future accountants on Wall Street that are going to get their ass beat in a bar in Chicago are saying all this stuff. And I'm sitting there going, wait a second, you clowns. But it's typical Duke. Like, Duke is full of – it's typical fans. Look, we want to taunt you, but don't say anything to us back or we're going to throw stuff. But the stuff before the game that I saw is awful. Like when we play Eric Gordon, the NBA player, we came out and we were playing Illinois, and Eric was the number 1 player in the country, and he had committed to Illinois. Sampson comes in, and now the kid decommits. So these guys are yelling at him, all this crazy stuff. So I grabbed Aaron, put his arm around him. I said, let's look at all these fat-ass guys right here. And I started pointing out, that guy's going to be accountant in Naperville. That guy's going to be unemployed and divorced by the time he's 12 or 22. That guy's going to have a drinking problem. That guy's going to be on. And Gordon just started laughing, right? Because ultimately, you know what? That's kind of what it is. But the things they were saying and the fact that a Duke player acts like an idiot again, and I guarantee you Shire and everybody else, because they are the program of hospitality, right? They are the program of decorum because of what happened at Wake. I'm surprised Filipowski could even play. I thought he was dead. I thought he broke his ankle. It's ridiculous. Their whole thing is ridiculous.
He sprained a knee and broke his ankle, Dan.
Yeah, it was an ankle sprain is what Shire said after the game. Then it was a knee, but it wasn't worthy of evaluation after that.
Right.
Then he played all of his minutes, and the whole thing has kind of gone away.
Probably tripped with the bad
Shire
leg.
went and apologized to the Cameron Crazies. I saw a video of him, and you can hear him going up and shaking the seniors' hands, apologizing to them as other fans were throwing drinks and things to the North Carolina players post-game. So that was his reaction to it.
Yeah.
Dan,
Yeah, I got nothing.
You mentioned fights. Chad had a great setup, great question about fights last week when your power went out, and we missed your great answer. I know you heard at least a portion of the question, but for those that missed it, here it is.
Dan, I love what you said about so many people come after you and then see you in public and say, "Oh, I didn't know you were that big." I have a rule, honestly, online that if someone comes after me online, I only go hard after them if I'm willing to physically fight them. I honestly, I look up profile pictures, I'll find them on Facebook, and if I see them, I'm like, yeah, I want to fight this guy. Then I will go at them and be as disrespectful as they are me because I'm prepared to fight. I feel like so many things in this world would probably calm down if everyone took that approach of, I better be prepared to fight this person physically, because if not, then I probably shouldn't say anything to them. Your thoughts?
Dan,
My thoughts are this. I always go back to what my wife said. There was a guy that came at me, and I let it go. And then finally, I turned around, and I said, "Hey, man, that's it. I mean, I'm going to knock the living head." This is about 6 months ago. And the guy, thankfully, went away. And my wife looked at me, goes, "You're an idiot." I go, "Why?" She goes, "There was probably a day you were tough, but it ain't now. So stop." I go, "Wait a second. The guy was after me, like we were at a concert. A guy was after me for." I go, finally, she goes, "I know, and I appreciate it." She goes, "But so I had one time, after a Louisville game, I'm walking with our producer and director, and we're leaving the Yum Center, and these guys are killing me. And I'm like, all right, that's fine. Well, they kept on, and two of them stayed. The others peeled off. Two of them were like, "You mother blank." And finally, I did the same thing. I said, "Hey, man, that's enough. I'm going to kick your ass first, and when I'm done with him, I'm going to kick his ass." And my directors are like, "Holy hell." The one dude, they kind of like, "Holy crap." I said, "But you're first." I said, "You're first. Let's go, you and me, because you've been the big mouth, and then I'm going to kick the lip." And there was a lot of swear words. My guys like pushed me into this little restaurant bar that we were going to, and they're like, "You get enough." I don't pay attention, and I should do this. It's got me in trouble. I don't look at people's Twitter handle when I come back. I just come back at them and then figure it out later. In fact, Dan Wolken of the USA Today said that I insulted a little kid. A little kid came at me. I didn't know it was a little kid. I just knew somebody came at me, and there wasn't. And I'm like,
well,
hey.
Why is a little kid on Twitter coming after you? That's also
right.
Why does the little kid have a Twitter account? How old is this kid?
That kid became a man that
Who
day.
are these kids? This kid's parents. That he's got a Twitter account coming after you on Twitter.
And
that's
the parent,
weird.
It was actually the parent that ran the account, and he lied like hell, and he made a big deal about it. I'm like, "Hey, man, I don't read resumes," and I didn't even say anything bad. I just said something like, "Hey, man, I know you're being a phony. Donate to my bikes program." And his daddy went all nuts, wrote my radio station. And I'm like, "Hey, man, I don't read everybody's profile before I respond. Sometimes I'm just bored, and I go from person to person because I got nothing to do." I mean, I don't know. I hope to God I never get punched again, and I hope to God I never punch someone again, because I don't need that action.
It's a lesson to all fathers and kids out there. Don't at him.
Yeah, I'm like Dan. I don't want to physically fight anyone.
Yeah.
That my fighting days are over. I don't want to fight. But I have to be prepared to fight if I'm really going to go after someone. And I have to look at them and say, all right, if this guy comes after me, am I ready to throw hands? And if the answer is yes, then I press in.
I don't think people do that, though. I've never – well, that's not never, actually. I don't know. I don't know that I'm in fact, I've had a lot of people come up to me and said, "Hey, man, you know, whatever." And that happened actually twice yesterday. I went to the Indiana game, and two Indiana fans were mad that I was Izzo got me tickets yesterday. So I'm sitting behind the bench because Izzo and I have been friends. And a couple of, "Well, I can't believe." I go, "Hey, man, why are you yelling at me?" That's what I say now. "Why are you yelling at me?" If you want to talk, let's talk. Well, I go, why are you yelling at me? Just why are you yelling? Just leave me alone. And the guy walked away. But, yeah, I hope I never have to because I'm not good at it. I'd get my ass beat, and I'd probably complain about it on the radio.
Or on Don't At Me with Dan Dakich.
You can catch him.
You catch him
Right.
each morning right here at Outkick.
Hey, here's how you can
That's
avoid
right.
all that. Don't add him.
That's what, yeah. That's
If you don't
a
want to
lesson
get
to
your
all
ass
kids and
beat,
fathers.
if you're a little kid that's going after him and you don't want to get made fun of
Yeah.
by Dan, just don't add him, and then we can solve all these problems by not adding Dan Dakich.
If you don't want to ruin your adolescence, don't at Dan Dakich. That's simple.
That's what I tell.
Dan Wolken, by the
That's
way,
what
is
I
a
tell
huge
Indiana
loser.
fans.
Yeah.
Huge loser. We've had him on the show. I've challenged him multiple times. He actually came on one time. I destroyed him. Dan Wolken. I destroyed
Who
him
you know
about
well.
some things on the show. Yeah, total. Yes. Yeah, whatever.
I'll tell you a story. When I was going through some stuff a few years ago, a friend of mine, these are my friends, sent me this article that had just come out by Wolken in USA Today, and he kills me. Like, he crushed me in this article. True story. I'm reading this article on my phone going, wow, man, I'm a bad guy. I don't have a doorbell. My door, somebody knocks on the door. And I have a policy that I don't answer my front door. I just don't answer it. If you're coming to my house, I'm sure you're going to I don't answer my front door. But I was kind of like walking around my house, and I'm like, all right, I answer it. Some lady that lived down the street, what we do on my cul-de-sac is we let our dogs kind of go on the cul-de-sac. Some lady is all excited. She goes, I'm going to shoot your dog.
Wow.
I go, man. I go, hey, ma'am, do me a favor.
She
Don't
packing
shoot
heat?
my dog.
She packing heat at the time?
Just don't shoot my dog. Yeah, I slammed the door, and I went back to reading Dan Wolken's hit piece on me. I was like, man, what the hell?
What's
Like,
the
come on.
Double trouble.
What's the reason for the policy of no front door, Dan?
I learned that in my other neighborhood, the only people that knocked on my door were people wanting to sell me magazines for something. And a friend of mine told me that. He goes, Dan, don't answer your front door. Mark Boyle, who's the Pacers play-by-play guy on radio. And I thought he was nuts. And then since I've adopted the policy, it's a great policy. Think about it. You know, when you're a kid and you go knock on doors, somebody knocks on your door, you're excited, right? Jimmy's coming over to play, right? Let's go. But now, if somebody's coming over to your house, they're going to text you. Hey, look, I'm going to stop by. Hey, look, you mind if whatever? Hey, let's watch a game. Come on, you know. Nobody. When's the last time somebody knocked on your door that you didn't know was coming, that you actually enjoyed the interaction with that person? You know what I'm saying?
That's a great point. That's a great point. Dan, always great to catch up with you, man. Enjoy the week. Enjoy the madness.
I love you. Thanks, guys,
man.
for having me, man. You guys are the best teammates ever. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, thanks,
Stay
Dan.
with you.
You're
Dan
the
Dakich
best.
there. Don't at me with Dan
Don't
Dakich
add him.
mornings.
Definitely don't shoot his dog either.
Yeah. At least she had the courtesy to let him know that she was going to.
I mean, that's a literal warning shot, right?
That's right.
I'm knocking on this guy's door and saying, I will shoot your dog. And he said, please don't. And she didn't.